Hi all, I have another amazing Leela game to show you, this time from a tournament which is currently on, the Chess.com Computer Championship. So this is stage 1 of that tournament, the Rapid Rumble, which is 15 minutes with a 5-second increment. And the opponent is one of the latest versions of Ethereal, which currently is making its way to the Premier Division. So it started in a much lower division, Division 4, and has been promoted and will promote again 3 times promotion to be in the Premier Division. So this is a Premier Division level TSEC engine, and this is a very interesting encounter indeed. Let's have a look at it. So there's no opening book on these games. That's one thing to point out, a very important thing to point out here. So D4, and that's from Leela. So E6 from Ethereal. So this invites either a French defense or perhaps a Nimzo Indian territory or Queen's Gambit declined. Leela goes for E4. So we have Nimzo Indian. We have a French defense now. It was a favourite move of Mikhail Botvinnik, by the way, E6. So it's letting white choose C4 or E4. So E4, D5. We have Knight C3, Knight F6, Bishop G5, Bishop B4, the McCutcheon variation. So now in this tournament context, the Ethereal was on massive hardware, but so is Leela actually for V100s. I'll put the technical specs in the pinned comment of this video. So this is very interesting if Leela chooses the same as in the games we've covered. The same sort of style. E5, H6. Now here is already a deviation, which is actually the third choice in Chess-Based Livebook. Bishop going back all the way to C1. The main move seems to be Bishop D2. The second most popular is Bishop E3, which we've seen a couple of examples of, well, against the Ethereal and Stockfish. But Bishop C1, so that could be the impact of Leela on the greatest hardware to date. That it thinks Bishop C1 is a great move. So we have Knight E4, Queen G4 hitting G7. This is a really interesting line. So here you can observe if Knight takes C3, which looks scary, white has time for Queen takes G7 here, hitting the rook. For example here, then there's Bishop D2. So that's getting the material back with advantage. In fact here, Bishop takes C5 is best, and white would get an advantage out of this. For example, this line, white's got a big advantage. So the king actually goes to protect F8 instead of taking on C3. And now we have A3. Bishop takes, B takes, and now this Leela repeats this kind of gambit. It is double pawns, and it's interesting what happens with pawns in this game. It's like Leela's not that concerned about her pawn center in this game, as long as she's getting a strong attack, and also she's not concerned about extra pawns of the opponent as long as they're like diced and not that strong. So this is really fascinating. Watch the pawn chain of both sides. Now black's retained all pawns at the moment. Bishop D3, Bishop D7. So an interesting gambit position to start off with. And I believe that Leela needs like an interesting imbalance to work with right from the opening to beat these kinds of opponents on massive hardware. Otherwise, it's very likely the game will be a draw. So to install from the opening, to install from the opening a concrete advantage of some sort is really important, I believe, and makes the game interesting as well. So Knight H3, this is a really great move. Instead of Knight F3, the knight on the rim might be dim, but it's coming out to hit G7 here via Knight F4 to H5. Fantastic route to take compared to Knight F3. So we have C5, and there's no effort made here to protect the centre of more. I mean, the queen is technically protecting D4, but Knight F4 is played. And now Ethereal plays Knight E4 on C takes. Then the knight goes to H5 to threaten Queen takes G7. And this position, the knight's guaranteed f6. And in fact, after a4, there's things like bishop a3 check now. This position is just nasty for black. For example, like this. Black's actually falling to bits, it seems. White's got a big advantage there. Let's go back and review this a little bit extra. Here, say knight c6, then the check. What does it actually do? Check. This is very nice for white. White's able to hold e5 here. So knight c6, although it seems plausible, this is a very dominating position for white to have. So very, very interesting already in this game. So knight e4 was played, not taking the pawn, but knight e4. White castles, knight c6, f3, and the knight goes back. And now, with the centre really under fire, you might think, is Leela just like losing her centre for nothing? For absolutely nothing? If she tries to protect with, say, bishop e3, this position doesn't bode too well. Black's got a small edge there, at least. Maybe black's not too interested in taking on e5 as well. But this position seems black's doing fine. But here, yeah, no, there isn't any bishop e3. That's not the point. This is a really weird. I have to say, I don't know if it's because it's really early in the morning here. It's like I'm analysing this game at 6 in the morning. I'm thinking, this is like a weird and wonderful forest. This game, it's full of richness. I'm wondering, h4 is played. The quiet h4 as the centre's collapsing. H4's played. So knight takes d4. So what do we have here? Black has every single pawn intact, and as one island, by the way. I'll keep a track on the number of pawn islands in this game. So it's a double pawn gambit now. 2 pawns. But one of the knights is sent to Siberia. Trademark Leela. One of the knights is sent to a4 after bishop d2. And that's good news. We have a rook being activated on the b file. And the knight actually goes back to actually sort of shield b7. Another way of protecting b7, say bishop c6, then knight h5, this position, the other knight can be kicked, and it's just unpleasant here because you see that the knight's been deprived b5 because of that rook on the b file, and it gets really crazy. Say queen a5. This is a crazy. Well, these are crazy variations, I have to say. Like knight e4 threatening knight f2 check and hitting the bishop. But white ends up better here, it seems, after taking. And now rook takes c5. Yeah, not taking on g4, but rook takes c5 is best. And the knight gives itself up there, but bishop b4 now threatening the discovered check. Crazy lines, but white ends up better after all that, with a big advantage. So that's on bishop c6, yeah, knight h5. So it's wonderful stuff. So the knight goes to b6, and we see knight h5, g6, knight f6. So white has accomplished at least a fantastic looking knight on f6, and has this trump card bishop. So this bishop has no counterpart. So Leela iconically can get really good dark square bishops in all the sort of blitzy games we've seen. Can she do anything with it here? Queen c7. But to me, this is what Leela needs, a really interesting imbalance, a favourable imbalance, ideally, out of the opening. Yeah. And it's, materialistically, most engines would have earlier, they would have munched the pawns, most engines. They're greedy by nature. So is black going to be punished here? We see c3. Now, on queen takes e5, this is out of the question because knight takes d7 is check. And then c takes d4, this position, white's clearly a piece up, and the pawns are dropping a little bit as well. So that's a big advantage for white. So knight f5 was played, and we have now the move h5. So is black's king a bit vulnerable. We have King G7 protecting G6 here. On Queen takes here, let's just explore this again here. Knight takes. This variation, yeah, the rook's crashing on the B file, and that's good enough really to secure an advantage. This is crazy with HG. Well, if the bishop doesn't want to move, yeah, we get a line like this where the dark square bishop is running rampant here. It's got things like bishop B4. So say A5 to stop bishop B4. Then this position, this variation ends up with the white rooks actually crashing down to the 7th rank, 2 pigs on the 7th, and white actually is just mopping up here, ends up with a fantastically dominating position, material up. Basically, this is an example sequence. So white ends up with a big advantage there, but this is a real interesting forest of variations here. If we just go back and have a look at that sequence again. Here, HG, C takes, rook takes, FG. There's something else I wanted to show. Just let's see the power of bishop B4, but it's not actually bishop B4. This is even stronger. Queen takes, and then bishop C3. This is the point. This dark square bishop can sometimes run rampant and expose loose pieces in the position. So say E5 is played, then that's rook takes E5 is fantastic because white's on that F7, so this is possible. And that's absolutely murderous. And if the more resourceful D2 here, then white's still massively better here. Look at this. This is just crashing through. It's the dark squares have been compromised. Black's just losing material. Horrendous. So King G7, not touching E5, is probably advisable. Now E5 is actually explicitly protected. We have knight C4, bishop F4 holding E5 again, bishop C6, rook F2. Now this is really interesting. Rook F2, what we're about to see. Rook A F8, bishop takes F5, which gives the queen the H4 square now. So that's been made available, and there's the possibility of E6 at the right time. We have rook A8. Now E6 here, well, there are other moves actually to consider. Why the weird rook A8, you might ask. Let's rule out G5 just quickly, because this is possible, and that's checkmate. Let's look at Queen A5 hitting C3. Here, Rook C2 is handy. For example, D4, HG, C takes. Remember, the Queen's protecting the Rook. This is crazy lines. The Rook's hitting the Knight. So say this. Here, hitting the Knight again. Then this Rook takes C5. And White ends up, after bishop takes G5, hitting the Queen, protecting the Queen. White ends up in a big advantage situation. Yeah, E6. This is a big advantage for White. That pawn is great. The bishop is magnificent. The knight's kind of, yeah, it's F5 is dropping. So White has a big advantage there. And also there is some, let's have a look at A6 instead of D4 to see what's going on here. HG. There's a key move G4 to try and rip open the king, the G file to the king. So for example here, Rook H2, there's also the H6 target as well. This is crazy stuff. Bishop takes, check. Knight G8 check is the most accurate to have Queen E7 checkmate. And there's also, just for the record, there's also Knight takes D5. Have a look at Knight takes. Yeah, there's a long mating with Knight. Anyway, Knight G8 is the most accurate. Yeah, this is all really, really crazy stuff. I know, it's like a forest of variations. So we end up this weird move Rook A8 being played. I mean, it's not often you see a move like Rook A8. It's just, yeah, Okay. And this now here, Leela plays a really fantastic move. I wonder if you can spot it. If I give you 5 seconds to pause the video, really super duper move. It guarantees a big advantage. Okay, knight takes d5 was played. So this vacates f6. Now, the game continuation was g5, but let's, before we go into that, you might have also been tempted by e6 here. Black just plays queen e7 here, and that knight's loose. So, for example, here, there's nothing for white to do. This is just a big advantage for black. So yeah, knight takes d5 is a key move. G4 is also strong, by the way, though. This way of playing it is also strong, even giving up f4 because there's check. So forking king queen. This is a crazy line. I think quite entertaining as well. Crazy line behind the scenes. There's just so many crazy lines in this game. So that's like checkmate there, and yeah. Okay, so knight takes d5, really powerful move. So g5 is played. On bishop takes, then there's check, and then e6. So yeah, the queen's attacked, f7's attacked. So if it takes, then that's checkmate. And what else? Yeah. Otherwise just losing the queen. So that's pretty terminal actually, e6 here. So so we don't have bishop takes d5, we have g5. And here, if Leela plays bishop takes, then there's simply bishop takes d5 because the bishop's interrupted the queen coming to f6 and there's no longer an f4. It's a totally different scenario. Here, black's just got a big advantage. So that's not the point here. After g5, Leela cashes out. Yeah, the queen's come off. But something I would like to note to you, and maybe for your Instagram positions, is have a look at black's number of pawn islands after g takes h4. Now, it's like totally diced. 1, 2, 3. This dicing over here, I thought, is kind of remarkable. That these are going to be easy pickings, maybe in the endgames. This diced pawns will be fun for the white king to pick them up later. So e6 is played. So white is the exchange up. But let's do a pawn audit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, black's only lost 1 pawn. And here, okay, rook e8 is played. On f takes e6, rook takes. This position is very nice for white, as you might expect. In this scenario, the h pawn is dangerous, very, very dangerous, and winning material and winning the game. So, so e6, we have rook e8. So the exchange up. f6, yeah, just look at the pawn chain, incredibly fragmented. Rook d1, knight b6. King h2, knight d5, bishop d2, knight c7, e7, bishop a4. So this is interesting technique, bishop b5. There's a lot of harassment from black here. Now it's fragmented over here. Can this be fragmented? Bishop f4, knight d5. So this is forcibly transitioning further. Simplification after bishop f4. Knight has to counter-attack because the bishop's dropping off otherwise. So we have this situation now where Leela plays basically a minority attack, a4, to try and fracture this pawn chain, dice it up as much as this. And we do get, after c4, yeah, black collects yet another pawn with rook takes e7. So white's just the exchange up. But this minority attack now. This pawn, it's wonderful that this pawn is immune. It takes a few moves for the knight to try and attack it. So we have knight c8, king h3, king f7, rook b1, f4, and look at this. This pawn chain. Yeah, cubed. It's literally like a cube structure, as well as diced. So king takes. The king takes one of the pawns finally. So black now has lost the second pawn after all this time. But now look, this has been diced as well. Look at this pawn structure. And you might think nothing of this, but yeah, even in early Leela IDs against Andrew Tang, Tang's pawn structure got mashed. It got absolutely diced. It's like Leela's not just the master of pawn breaks, but of dicing pawn chains as well. And this is just so diced. If it's like they're just less valuable pawns, and Leela's really pushed that. She's yeah, this is an Instagram position. Look at just look at the pawns. If you want to Instagram this position, you know, use the usual hashtags: Kingscrusher, Casey Chess, Leela Chess, whatever. So Rook B5. Yeah, they're just ripe to be taken. It's very, very difficult to defend these pawns now. You might think, well, why did Black do that anyway? Maybe the possibility of A6 and then infiltrating. Yeah, it just wanted to be eliminated. So A4, but the pawns are going here. Knight is changed back. Yep, it's easy peasy, it seems, to pick up these pawns now. We have now King G4. And the knight is pretty helpless here. It's just watching all the pawns drop off. C5 restricting knight for a moment. G4. And now after King D5, Leela has got an intention to create an outside pass pawn here. King F5. Yep. An outside pass pawn now is on the cards with G5 getting the outside H pawn. That happens here. And in fact, the rook's not even needed to queen any pawns now after this. Yeah, the knight's just overloaded. There's a little trick here of queening, I guess. Knight G6 worth showing. Knight G6, but we have King E4, and this the rook just says, "Okay, get on with it, guys. just queen. You don't need me to queen against the knight." So yeah, and yeah, underplaying to a rook. And checkmate. I think yeah, fantastic game, full of richness, and this is really what I was hoping for, because in some of the other games there's been some interesting events happening in this tournament, by the way. In two of the games there were like technical issues, and it went in Leela's favour, so 2 draws got converted into 2 wins. But in the first instance of one of those, Leela was winning anyway, apparently. I never got to see that game. And in the 2 draws I did see, I was a bit worried because I thought Leela was playing too quickly in the opening, as though it was a 5-minute with 5 increment game. And I did post about that, but maybe I'm wrong, you know. So you need a greater game sample to really know what's going on. But yeah, this so Leela's actually now currently at the time of this on 3.5 out of 4 in this competition. So, and amusingly, 2 of the draws were related to Leela's not having a table base and pushing in totally drawn positions theoretically, and then some sort of disconnection happened. So 2 of her draws turned into 2 wins. There was another draw, but then with this win, it's now 3.5 out of 4. So fantastic drama going on. But what a dramatic game. What an absolutely stunning, dynamic game against the French defence. I hope you'll agree too. Just full of richness and entertainment. Comments, questions, likes, shares appreciated. Thanks so much.